In the late 2010s, reports indicated that Emirates was eyeing up a discussion with Etihad Airways over a potential merger that would combine the two airlines. If approved and proceeded with, the deal could create one of the largest airlines in the industry. However, Emirates would eventually go on to reject a proposed and speculated deal for several reasons, and this is something I want to explore. But before I do, let's take a little bit of an overview of the proposed merger. In 2018, talks around Emirates' intent emerged as a landmark headline for the global industry. If such a deal had gone ahead, it would have been labelled the deal of the decade. However, analysts predicted even the century thus far. Reputable outlet Bloomberg did lead said reports, noting that through their sources, the pair were in early discussions over a potential deal. However, again, I have to reiterate, it was in the early stages. During this period, Etihad Airways struggled financially and tried to find means to cut costs. For Etihad, this led to streamlining, and discussion over a potential acquisition was really a last-ditch attempt to save the company from the inevitable that many predicted. Emirates promptly denied such reports of a potential takeover of the close neighbour based in Abu Dhabi. However, the general public argued that the company would hardly confirm a deal that was in discussions, considering its magnitude but also confidentiality. Thanks to the nature of reports, discussion over how a merger would pan out, from fleet to routes to employees and all other crucial areas, remained pretty much unclear. How did discussions come about? Well, at the time of initial reports from Bloomberg, Etihad Airways, as I briefly touched on, was just in a little bit of strife. When I say a little bit, it was actually a considerable amount. This all came following several poor business decisions implemented by key executives at the company. This also all took place over a multi-year period and included the most significant aircraft order in company history, which was placed in 2013. While this deal encompassed almost every available wide-body aircraft that was part of the next generation of fleet, it caused many issues for Etihad later down the line. A deal for almost 200 aircraft seemingly meant Etihad would be covered for any potential future growth it may incur. However, Etihad fell victim to becoming an airline with too many aircraft, and an airline that was looking to expand too quickly. Additionally, the company would invest in airlines within the industry without really any distinct planning or structure. These investments would backfire, with the respective carriers on more cases than one collapsing or entering significant financial struggles, which guess what, would then impact Etihad in a negative manner too. These investment decisions are still questioned to this day, however that has now happened and passed. Ultimately, in the end, and with several other contributing factors, Etihad Airways could no longer control its financial positions, and the losses began to mount. At its peak, Etihad were losing billions every financial year, and in a state that was seeing them continuously bleed money. Off the back of such poor performance, there were concerns around their long-term future, and whether they would be able to survive. This was when reports emerged over Emirates potentially looking to pounce on such a frustrating position for the Abu Dhabi-based company. Some believed that the two coming together would be a good fit. While Emirates was growing, Etihad Airways needed somehow an out of its current situation, and maybe Emirates could have come in to save the day. Despite reports from several sources and persistent discussions, Emirates would ultimately not move forward with Etihad Airways in a merger capacity. Emirates continuously rejected claims it was discussing an acquisition, despite pretty firm reports from Bloomberg throughout this entire process. Although many would claim that, let's just say, even if the company were discussing a merger on any kind of count, that they would never reveal such details until it was officially confirmed, so you can never take what executives say at face value. For Emirates, there were several reasons why it didn't move ahead with a proposed deal. Really, during the early stages of rumours circling about a deal, analysts cited similar geographical positioning, fleets, and business models as just some of the core fundamental reasons why Emirates may not look to move ahead. A deal between any airline needs to be mutually beneficial. Some predicted that the closeness of the two companies would contribute to an eventual collapse of talks. With such similar fleet and business model, how could necessarily Emirates take on Etihad and it be beneficial for them? I'd love for you to potentially discuss that question down below in the comments, of course in a speculative and proposed manner, knowing this will never happen. Ultimately, also for an airline like Emirates, they were already a very successful business and had a business model that encompassed many areas. Adding Etihad Airways to the equation most likely would have had negative repercussions rather than positive. Why is this? Well, on top of what I discussed, Emirates also would have been forced to juggle not just a large employee base, but a significant amount of routes, new airport base, and a significant fleet as well that all came with it. This would take time, effort, and energy, and it is something similar that is taking place at Aviation and Korean. They will have a lot to sift through once they can obtain all the regulatory approval necessary, and how that pans out remains to be seen. An interesting point I wanted to also cover was the nature of Etihad Airways once they concluded the turnaround period. They were really a changed airline. Following all the losses that amounted to many billions, Etihad, as you may be aware, engaged in that turnaround plan. They wanted to improve their position, and the larger mission was to emerge leaner and more sustainable to actually survive the long term and any potential issues that they may find themselves in. While not their fault, the arrival of the global pandemic in 2020 certainly proved why needing to be sustainable is one of the most important areas of a business. And while this did hinder the 5-year turnaround plan, Etihad Airways were eventually able to emerge from these losses in a far stronger position. Thanks to this change, Etihad emerged as what Emirates described as a changed company. Emirates actually viewed the new and improved Etihad Airways as a company that could sustain itself on its own within the industry, and what they say was for the very first time in the company history, which is a pretty good thing to hear if you are Etihad Airways, but also signifies why Emirates doesn't have an intent now to move forward with a potential deal. While Emirates still has a view to collaborate with Etihad Airways, a complete takeover, as discussions initially highlighted in the late 2010s, would no longer be an optimal option for the airline. That is going to conclude today's analysis on why Emirates rejected Etihad Airways, just covering some of the major talking points, but no doubt there are many inner workings as well that we'd have to sift through. That could be a documentary in itself. If you have any thoughts, you can let me know down below in the comments. Naturally, this deal didn't take place, but I would love to hear your opinions on if it did. How do you believe it would have actually worked? Obviously, at some point, Emirates did put forward the question over a potential deal, and while we know some of the reasons why they chose against it, what did they see in Etihad Airways that even prompted this? Thank you very much for tuning in. Please take care and do also be safe. I'll see you next time for more coverage on the aviation industry. And we'll fly.